That's James's dinner, and I use this sweet and sour stir-fry mix. My Zoe got top of the stack against these other movies, and I'll talk about them in a minute. Since James took a while, I decided to write out what I was going to say, so this shouldn't take me very long actually at all, which is good because it's cooled up quite a bit since I made James's dinner earlier today. Late. So, I'll get started. My Zoe, 2021. Julie Delpy starred in this movie that she wrote, directed, and she produced it along with others. The character she plays starts out with one child and ends up with one child. What's unethical about that? Is what she did to have her child more unethical than what other people have done to have 10 children? This movie is Julie Delpy's best work. One may see it as her life's purpose. She did amazing work here. When she was walking downtown and held out her hand, I started crying. And if you're watching the movie, if you're not crying at that point, I don't know what's up with you. My heart actually hurt for the fictional woman she played. Since CRISPR, I can't see why cancer, age, or anything else would be a problem. Forget Dolly the sheep these days. Dolly Parton could choose to have a mini Dolly Parton if she could find someone to help her manage the gene work and pregnancy. Is that unethical, really? Let him go, 2021.
Oh, is she a little bit advanced in age or something like that?
Yeah, a little bit, but
if it's only her first child. Okay.
I don't want to give the movie
first child.
No, it's a little bit different. This story is a little bit different. It deals with well, I'm not going to give it away. You watch it. Let Him Go 2021 is another movie about another mother who isn't willing to let her child go. It was great. The mention of the residential school wasn't tied in well enough to warrant its inclusion in this movie. They could have had the native man playing more of a heroic role with the explanation that he doesn't want to see another boy abused by having been taken away from his loving family. Instead, the mention of red schools seemed forced into the movie for political reasons. It could have made the movie better, perhaps, but it cheapened the movie instead. And it was a great movie. So it's really it's a shame. The Exorcist Believer, 2023, may have been as good as the original, which I didn't really care for that much. The ending was worse, though. I think the makers tried to put too many things into the movie, and it didn't really work. You know, a lot of things didn't seem well planned out or whatever. They were there, and it's like, why? Or whatever. Light of My Life, 2019. Is it more believable that women would be controlled than men? Especially now that two women could quite conceivably have children together. Since CRISPR, why couldn't they have offspring that contains both parents' DNA? Expense? Currently, yeah. Ethics? As much as the movie's concept was interesting and the acting decent, I found the movie pretty boring. It's too bad. Solitary Man 2010 featured many good actors who didn't manage to pull this crap movie along. Am I supposed to feel warmth for this sleazeball? I think they used Michael Douglas so that the viewers would like the main character. I didn't like the main character and did not believe Michael Douglas in this role. Also, the use of Solitary Man, performed by Johnny Cash, didn't work.
Is it that old Neil Diamond one? I'll say what I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Neil Diamond composition.
Yeah, well, I like the Chris Isaac one more, but in any case...
Chris Isaac would blow both of those guys out of the water.
But in any case, it didn't work for the movie. You know, that one, it's about women that were two-timing, and he's trying to find a great... And this is a movie about a sleazeball man. This is... Anyway, it didn't work.
So he's a hypocrite, is what you're saying.
It didn't work at all. Yeah. The use of the song in the movie, and the title should have been different. Whatever.
I got no sympathy for cheating guys who get cheated on. I really do.
Yeah, well, that didn't... Anyway, The Miracle Club 2023 wasn't good. The acting was fine. They just didn't have quality to work with. Those who liked Road to Avonlea or read Maeve Binchy novels might disagree with me, though. The Lesser Blessed 2012, using metaphors and speech doesn't usually make people come across as artistic, teens often think it will before they realize they don't seem like witty poets but stupid teens. Having said that, somehow the novel that this was based on was critically acclaimed. It's about a native teen in the Northwest Territories. I did enjoy the thought of a movie about a native teen in the Northwest Territories. And that was as far as that went. Chaos Walking 2021. This movie featured one of the Spider-Men and Mads Mikkelsen, so I expected more from it. It was another movie about women having been culled from a human herd. The Arrangement 2019 is a fantasy police drama that felt very film school. The acting was bad, the lighting was bad, pretty much everything about this movie didn't measure up. The story was interesting enough until the end. I actually hoped it was going somewhere good. It didn't. God is a Bullet 2023 had decent actors, lighting, and other production values, yet it sucked. The main problem was the two main characters. The actors weren't suited to either the roles or each other or both. I don't know. It was just not very good. Got the bottom of the stack. And that one has Jamie Foxx in it. So
I've never
bottom
seen
of the
him
stack.
in a bad performance.
I know. I was shocked. So that's that. And I should mention that this, how does it taste, by the way?
This is awesome. What you've done with the pineapple.
It smelled good while I was cooking it. But the ingredients, it says only red bell peppers, green bell pepper, garlic, chives, and ginger. That's it for ingredients. And it's like, okay, well, is it worth buying a pouch? Why couldn't you just do that yourself? You know, I think you could. So, but the thing is, it has the other green, like it calls for pineapple, soy sauce.
I thought you'd
I
just
put
bring that
apple cider vinegar in. It called for white vinegar.
That would make any difference.
So it calls for the like chicken and snap peas, and I didn't use chicken. So,
no, thank you.
Yeah, and I didn't use snap peas. I used regular frozen peas from the bag.
It shouldn't make it.
I think it was fine. So
I
put in some extra things too. I put in some celery and stuff like that. So
I'm enjoying it a lot, really.
Yeah.
I like the peas there.
All right. So
I could tell they weren't fresh from the pod, but who cared?
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I have to talk about. So do you want to talk more, or you want me to just give this a...
I'll talk a little bit about this. So
okay,
the other day when I signed off, we were talking about catastrophism. And
oh yeah, you had lots of time.
How we're still, I believe in enlightenment, but not the enlightenment. There were a lot of bad things that came out of the enlightenment. So there's been ever since I was a kid, probably before, well, really, all of the 20th century, there's been this anti-enlightenment movement. And unfortunately, it's spread out from being against the enlightenment to being against enlightenment. So there's this urge to operate, I believe it's up the right side of the brain. It's seen as superior to just go with the flow. Intuition's better than thinking things through. You know, I don't believe in a God, but something like nature provided us with two hemispheres. And the smartest people I know try to use both of them. Please, use both of them. We do a little bit of calculating. Like, a lot of my, well, the ones that were really over the top, of the rock stars from the 60s, I didn't really care for. I didn't care for Janis Joplin. I kind of admired Jimi Hendrix's performances. I didn't terribly want to hear him sing. His lyrics were a lot better than, let's say, pretty well any rap lyric out. And it was better, they were better, I'd say, than the average Motown lyric if you leave Smokey Robinson out of consideration, maybe a few others. You know, you look at the folks that just kind of lived on the edge, you know, just intuited things and let things take care of themselves. People like Jim Morrison, died 1971. Janis Joplin, died 1970. Jimi Hendrix, died 1970. Brian Jones, died 1969. He was kind of ahead of the curve. Keith Richards, I don't know. You know, not a very good song. It's called Happy. It's off the Rolling Stones' Exile on Main Street. But it's got a line that kind of sums Keith Richards up, which is, never blew a second chance. He's singing about himself. Oh, he got on heroin. I don't know who it was. I saw him on tour in '69. He said this person said he looked green. He's probably already on heroin there when they were on tour in the second half of '69. And doing things like recording Brown Sugar, so on and so forth. Yes, I know they released it in 1971, but they tended to have lots of stuff in the can and would release things hither, thither, and yon. A lot of people are that way. You can do that with recording. So, yeah, enlightenment. I believe in enlightenment. I believe in people like using both sides of the brain. So I actually believe in memorization. You know why? So you can let your brain work on it. You know, your intuition, if it doesn't have something to work with, it's like having a computer with no data entry. Good luck with that. Yeah, pretty useless. Anyway, one of the things that came out of the Enlightenment was the idea of uniformitarianism when it comes to geology, and also, interestingly enough, when it comes to biology. And the trouble with biology, we'll just get on that for a second. Think about it, please. Think about it. I mentioned this to a biologist over at the university. He was, I mean, this was recently. This was this millennium. I was questioning the idea of survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest is a negative process. And Darwin dreamed up positivity. You've got ABC, C ain't fit, drops out. Huh? You know, like all you've got left in the gene pool, and they didn't understand genes back then. It took them almost 100 years to figure genes out. But basically, you've got the genes A and B. That's all that's happened. C's dropped out. Okay? C has dropped out. At the time of Darwin, they didn't even understand recessive genes. As I understand it, that was maybe dreamed up by Gregor Mendel at that time. But his stuff, I don't know if he published it in his lifetime, but it was around 1900, I believe, when his stuff was published. That's a little bit after Darwin. Okay. So, the way new stuff happens when it comes to biology is mutation. Mutation is sudden. And the funny thing about mutation is, you know, it doesn't seem to be just totally random. For example, if you zap flies with radiation, and radiation can cause mutation, there'll be a certain number that won't have wings. Bad luck for that fly. But you just never can tell where flies might be in a situation where it might be an advantage not to have wings. And then all of a sudden you have flies crawling around on the ground and crawling around on leaves and whatever. They might have some other things that were zapped into them that give them a certain advantage. They might have great hopping ability. They might end up being like miniature grasshoppers or something like that. Of course, you can get miniature grasshoppers. Now, Darwin didn't dream. He couldn't conceive of mutation. And yet, you cannot question the idea of survival of the fittest driving evolution. It doesn't drive anything. It drives things to extinction. Okay? It drives things to extinction. It's a negative process. and thinking that it could be yield a positive is kind of like saying, hey, if I keep on subtracting numbers off a million, I'll eventually get 2 million. Yeah, it doesn't work out that way. Think. Don't knee-jerk react. I know the biologists out there, all one half of a brain of them, are just knee-jerking. They're probably going to suffer hyperextension of the knees. Their knees are jerking so much. Both knees. But that's just the way it goes. So when it comes to geology, uniformitarianism. Oh, and they were really, really, really against the Bible. Because the Bible had, these are geologists, had things like the flood in them, and the sun standing still, and the 10 plagues of Egypt. All these miraculous things happen. And I'm telling you, there are miracles in the Bible that I have no truck with. Like Jesus raising people from the dead, and putting some spittle, as it's put in the King James Version, on people's eyes and having them see, and kind of sticking his fingers in their ears and having them hear and stuff like that. There's lots of things that I even admire in the New Testament, the sentiments of love and that sort of stuff. But those healing things, I don't really have much truck with. I'll read this stuff. Right now I'm reading the Bible in German, New Testament, in German, Italian, French, and those are the main ones I'm going through right now. Just going through, compare. There's differences. So, but the Old Testament, there's food for thought in some of those things. So I was talking about Sennacherib's army getting wiped out. Pauline was actually listening a little bit to it. And in the Bible doesn't, I think, want to talk about what happened. The accepted idea nowadays seems to be that Sennacherib made one campaign off to the west, conquered the Egyptians and the Ethiopians, as the Greeks called them, but really people from the Sudan. As I recall, the Assyrians called them Cush. And it was a smashing victory. The Assyrian accounts say that he captured the Egyptian princes, plural. And you kind of get the feeling any grown son of the then king of Egypt was taken into custody. And you see, that kind of gives the Assyrians control over Egypt. Hey, you want to have a rebellion against us? Well, which one of your sons do you want to see get their throat slit and hung up like a lamb and bled dry, hung up by his feet? The Assyrians did that with one rebel, as they saw it, rebel prince. Huh? It was a later king. I believe it was the grandson of Sennacherib. But like they would have thought up one prince that they conquered. This is Ashurbanipal, the grandson of Sennacherib.
Nobody wants to hear the gruesome stuff.
Well, I'm just explaining why. This isn't that gruesome. He just had a prince who he kept with his dogs. So he'd be begging for scraps and fighting with the dogs for scraps and stuff like that. And he spent the rest of his days that way. The Assyrians would think of all sorts of horrible things to do to princes or kings or whomever they captured. And so, the king of Egypt, and they basically only mention one, would be beholden to the Assyrians as long as they held on one of his sons. And I'm telling you what happened. The Assyrians, in the reign of Sennacherib, and through the reign of Esarhaddon, and through the beginning of the reign of Ashurbanipal, all lineage, granddad, father, and son. What they did was, anytime the king in the southern part of Egypt, centered out of Thebes, was giving them trouble, they'd come stomping in, or oftentimes they just send their flunkies in Egypt, send them down to Thebes and say, what was that?
A bird wants some food.
Okay.
Just telling me.
Send them down to Egypt, and with a new, they were all called Ramses. That wasn't their original name. We've got their original names. But, they're going around saying, oh, all these Ramses, they have the names of Ramses the third's sons. Going, yeah, they're his sons. And they got parachuted in by the Assyrians. So the Assyrians were playing divide and conquer. It was just basically out of Thebes eventually. And the Assyrians had divided the Delta area up into, now understand the Egyptologists call them Libyans. Yeah, it's stunning. If you look at Libya, it's just kind of like a small, thin coastal area where you could support a population, maybe a tenth of the population of Egypt, a 20th. But they're supposed to have conquered Egypt and set up the 20th dynasty. They're supposed to have entities ruling in the 21st dynasty. Oh, no, rather, they set up the 22nd dynasty and had, it looks as though there was a Libyan caste, as you say, to the 21st dynasty before the 22nd dynasty, and the 23rd dynasty, 24th and 25th. 25th is Sudanese, and so on and so forth. And the 26th dynasty, now we're down into real time. That's dated according to the Assyrian dating stuff. And what was his name? Psammetichus or wherever the accent comes. I get the feeling it was half Assyrian. His Assyrian name was Nabushazbani, something like that. And yeah. So, uniformitarianism. Let's get back to that. So, Sennacherib, 701 BC, he talks about a smashing victory over the Egyptians. And he talks about taking tribute from the temple in Jerusalem. He doesn't talk about conquering or being conquered by or being forced to retreat or anything like that. He talks about taking this stuff. And then after, I believe after he takes on Jerusalem, he goes into the southern part of Judah. And he claimed, I believe, to have taken 200,000 captives from that area, desert area. I can't see it. Could be 10 times, 20 times inflated, the figure. But he just, like, place after place after place south of Jerusalem, he claims to have conquered. Now, the Bible account kind of just talks about Sennacherib moving in, and one of his emissaries, Rabshakeh, talking outside of the gates of Jerusalem. I don't think he had a megaphone, maybe had a very loud voice, but he was yelling. And he was saying, Egypt is a broken reed. He's saying, don't depend on them. Don't lean on them like a cane or something like that. It's a broken reed. You'll just fall over on your side. So they're laying siege to Jerusalem. Now, this is a later campaign. The Bible's telescoped it. Why did they telescope it? They didn't want to mention this stuff was, I don't think it's mentioned, this stuff was taken from the temple in an earlier campaign, 701. And some brighter individuals have said, there are not too many of those folks left, said around 686, Sennacherib made another campaign to the west. And there he ran into trouble. Now, so the Bible says, really, I should say the Hebrew Scripture says, Bible, Old Testament, Hebrew Scripture says that I believe it's 180,000 of his troops, and I don't believe those numbers at all, were wiped out overnight. Passover. And, if you look at the place where he, I believe it's mentioned that in the Bible that he was camped out at Lachish. And when they were digging in Lachish, they found a layer of pig's bones that were obviously deposited intentionally It wasn't, you'd think it wouldn't be by Jews because pigs were unclean to Jews. But it looks as though it was laid down in a ritualistic kind of fashion, religious. And then underneath, this is the important thing. Are you taking notes? Take mental notes. Write it down. This is important. I didn't discover this passage. It was discovered by a guy called Velikovsky. And what he'd found is in the reports. There were bones, I presume human bones, underneath there, smashed, disarticulated, and strangely burned. I believe that's quoting the archaeological report. Strangely burned. They couldn't explain it. Why? Whence all the smashing? Now, Herodotus mentions it. Understand, he's the father of lies. He said that a mouse got loose in the Assyrian camp overnight, chewed up their bowstrings, and it spooked the Assyrians so much they went running off to Assyria. Wow. Let's have some verisimilitude. These Assyrians were hardened warriors. Yeah, they were superstitious, but it would take more than that to get those guys scampering. I am telling you. They got wiped out. The Bible says an angel of the Lord wiped them out. What was it really? An angel is a messenger. Velikovsky tracked this down. He looked at that very day, very night in China. And here's what the account says. The stars fell like rain. Stars, plural. Oh, that's just a meteor shower. No. When you read and I've looked at the original Chinese sources, I don't know if Velikovsky pointed this out. And you see the footnote, other sources said you couldn't see the stars that night. And I was going, yeah, so what? It was cloudy. How did they see the meteor shower? Wait for it. The reason why the stars didn't appear and why they only saw the meteor shower was because in the night it was as bright as daylight. That's how close those stars and how big they were, these meteors, how fast they were coming in. So the earth got thumped. One of the places it got thumped was Lachish. It was miraculous deliverance for the Jews in Jerusalem and stuff like that, but it wasn't a miracle. It was stuff coming from outer space. Are we almost finished?
You have about a minute and a half.
About a minute and a half. So, yeah. Now I don't know if that's what caused what we find in the dendrochronological record all over the world. The guy who published this was the world's leading dendrochronologist. They wait until he retired to talk about it. He says the earth got thumped in historical times, roughly 534 AD, and the world's trees stopped growing, as I recall, for 5 years. Okay, we don't have trouble with that because we've got records around the world of the sun being red all day. Okay? In following that date. Now, here's where he ran into trouble. He identified 2350 BC, roughly 1650 BC, and roughly 1150 BC. Uh-oh. I'd already come up with those intervals, but they're off by 500 years. The archaeology, in the sense of radiocarbon dating, agrees with me. Egyptian dating is off by 500 years. Those things all slide down 500 years. 2350